We're continuing knife defense with my teacher, Sifu Syed Ahmad of Eternal Springs Martial Arts. Go on Facebook and like Eternal Spring Martial Arts on Facebook.
Alright, so one of the things we covered in the last video obviously was just a straight knife defense. Right now we always said that if a person is holding a knife from the base forward, chances are he may not have much experience and is just using a knife for leverage versus actual contact. So when you see someone holding a knife in a reverse grip, chances are he has a little more experience. He's actually going to be holding the knife closer to his body. His movements are going to be a lot tighter. He's going to be very aware of his center as well as my center, and chances are he's going to be going for vital points on me. So the good part about this is that your basic training of Wing Chun teaches you enough defense against knives on that point where you have to protect your center while overtaking others, right? But now again, one of the things I've seen is that the second a knife comes into play, structure starts failing. And when structure starts failing, you rob yourself of power. So if Dominic comes in for a hook, now what I've done here is stand completely in a static position and just put my arm up, okay? Just to show you that if you don't do anything and just protect your face, you can still make contact and actually avoid getting struck with the knife as hard as it would have been initially. Now, if I use my shift, just like in Wing Chun, we show Chun, which is a turning punch, to strike, you have enough to control the center point. Now, if the guy is faster, chances are he's going to go with you, right? Now, if he goes with you, what's going to happen is, if I put my arm up, he's going to feel that contact and switch the grip. As he switches the grip, he's going to come in, grab my arm, and move to the other side. Now, I have to deal with another angle. It doesn't mean it's over, it just means the angle has changed. So as he shifts, I shift, right? So again, from the beginning, he comes in for the slice, he switches his angle, I switch my angle. As I switch my angle, again, I have the outer arm, as you saw in the last video. Now, just like before, what I'm going to do is use a hyperextension to force him to change his angle. He may have wanted to do something else from here, but if I change his angle, I change him to think differently, right? I force him to think differently. As I hyperextend, again, another worst case scenario, Dominic sees the change and changes with it. As he changes with it, notice the grip changes already. This arm is useless for me now, right? What's going to happen is he's now going to take another vital point on me, which is going to be towards my face again. So, again, Wing Chun, you build your bridge inside. I now have myself protected again. Dominic sees this change again, can change one more time. As he changes again, he goes for the low strike. I protect the lower quadrant. As I protect the lower quadrant, this can keep going. You can go defense all day long. The idea is he's going to eventually try to come through. He's going to try slicing your arms. If he notices that he can't get to the center, he's going to start trying to destroy what's protecting me. He's going to slice, take my arm, he's going to start coming back, doing whatever he wants to do. So the idea is, after we isolate, we have to turn the weapon back in on him. Not that different from what we were doing in the first video. So as Dominic comes in for the first slice, he switches, and protect. I hyperextend, he changes, I go high, he goes low, and now I'm going to do here again. I'm in the line of the knife, but I protected myself, but I can't stay here too long because he can continue moving forward. So what I'm going to do is continue my movement and get that knife away from me. As the knife's away from me, I'm going to try to break his grip. As I break his grip, I create a line from the knife to his carotid artery. With a single shift, I can make a lateral movement that will actually make the knife make contact with his neck. As I do that, the knife now has a new line I can follow. The knife has a line back to the stomach, so once again, I close the door. And it's over. So from the beginning, the knife comes in, I protect, I break, he switches, they switch with it. Switch, slice, break. Okay. Once again, comes in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, so yes, a little more advanced, but if you saw what I was doing, the components I was using were the most basic of Wing Chun. There was a shift, Tanzao, Ganzao. There was a bridge that I used as an arm break, which you saw in the earlier video as well. So, that being said, why do people's structure change when they see a knife in play? Well, they see a knife, fear immediately comes in. Fear comes in, you start losing your structure. If Dominic was to apply similar movement without a knife in his hand, that would be compared to a hook. Right? You see a hook coming, I don't fear it, I turn my body into it. For some reason, when the knife comes into play, my back starts arcing, I lose my power. Neutral spine, we always talk about it. As long as our spine is straight, we get the most power out of our body. So when I'm turning and facing Dominic's joint, the joint with a knife in it, I turn, and I face. What that's going to do, as you hear audibly as well, contact, the surface area changes. My body's behind that strike. It's not just my arm coming up and blocking, because he can continue through and drive his force through and hit me. My body is turning. As my body turns, my power is here. My line is proper, my back is straight, and my punch is straight. Now, what happens here? Same line, what Wing Chun would use in a situation like this is that now he feels a bridge. He can rock that bridge, come around with a back fist. I can catch that back fist, right? Now here I can use a turning punch, I can use not really a contact because the energy is coming inside here. I can bridge with more of an advanced contact technique. Now as I have this energy here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my grip, go for that break. Dominic sees that break coming, he's going to come in with a hook on the other side. Same idea applies, and he goes low. Boom, 2, right? So the hook comes in, Dominic catches the hook, locks, the break, so comes in high, he comes in low. So not that much different. So if you fear practicing the drill with a knife, practice it without the knife first. Get the movements down. And honestly, what we just did right now doesn't change at all when the knife comes into play. Yes, there's a knife in play, I understand that. You see a blade and it changes the way you think. But remember, when you go from an edged weapon to an open hand to 2 open hands, your alert level is much higher. You know, it's an interesting concept where your damage seems to increase when there's a knife in play. If Dominic comes with a slash here, I mean, he comes into a hook. Well, then if I make this my primary point of attack, these hits naturally feel a lot harder because you know there's a knife coming at you. If you don't go hard enough, the knife's going to continue to play with you, right? So same idea applies when there's no knife in your hand. Why go harder when there's a knife? Why not go harder to begin with? So when a hook comes in, I don't want you to go soft because there's no knife in play. Nothing should change. If I'm standing here and the grip comes in, this or no knife, his angle doesn't change at all, right? Just because there's a knife there, what people will do is turn a knife into an extension of their body. You can't look at this as a separate entity, a separate object. If you extend the weapon and you're holding the knife, you can tell if the person has experience. I know Dominic's not really extending the knife as his body here. The second he switches grip, now the knife is in tune. It's kind of molded itself into his own body. So if Dominic comes in and I don't block, well, it follows the same line as a hook, but even more dangerous, get a knife connected to it, right? But it's still a hook. You can't look at it as a different point. Hook comes in, I make contact, I still hit the same point. Just because it's a knife, I'm not going to go further, closer towards the knife because it's in his hand. I'm going to hit the same point on the radio because what does that do? Even when there's no knife in his hand, it reduces his grip. It softens up his punch because those carpals, metacarpals, points connected on the radio, those nerves that you hit, those soft spots, reduce the grip. And it's not because of how hard I'm hitting it or because there's I'm putting a lot of muscle into it. It's science. It's science, it's anatomy. You're plucking the guitar string that are actually holding the knife in place. So if I reduce that grip, what happens? The knife loses its power. What holds leverage to the knife is Dominic's grip to it. It's also his pliability. It's how he moves his wrist around with the knife. He doesn't keep the knife solid, he molds it to his body. So as it turns, the knife comes back, his elbow drops, he can come back down. So you can tell if the knife is molded to the body or not. It's the way the knife moves. Usually movements become more robotic when the person doesn't have that concept of the knife becoming an extension of his body. One of the things in Wing Chun is, yes, you have to understand how to go against a knife at the same time to understand how to hold a knife. If you don't know how to hold a knife, you don't really understand the mechanics of what you're defending against. So when the knife is in your opponent's hand, your field of vision can't change either. Peripherals have to be the same. If Dominic's hitting at me with a hook, I can't turn and face the knife, right? It's a very bad position to be in. I turn and I face the knife, I take everything I have and I isolate this joint and my peripheral changes. And when I do that, and Dominic sees I'm putting a fight with just one joint in his body because he's holding one weapon and then he has all these weapons free against me that he can still utilize very effectively. So again, your field of vision can't change. Your contact points have to still be the same. Even if I don't isolate the knife or pop it out of his hand, I still advance. Right? You isolate, but you advance. Knife comes in, I can hook. You don't stop. And if the knife's back there, then I continue my movement. So basic Wing Chun still applies. Wing Chun doesn't change just because there's a weapon in play. You have to remember that. The foundation of Wing Chun, the first level of Wing Chun you learn is to establish your foundation, establish sensitivity, establish gait, to understand what directions you can move in. There's only so many ways Dominic can hit me, and I want to keep on running. So you'll see providing some other videos. But if you apply the basic Wing Chun guideline, everything will feel familiar. Everything will feel familiar. There's nothing that's going to shock me from his movements because there's only so many ways he can hit me. Whether there's a weapon in his hand or not, there's only so many ways his body can move, his joints can move. If the joints allow him to move only a certain way, that's the only reason why we are able to read everything. We can read it like a book. So, as you see, the first thing you learn in Wing Chun is you learn how to punch. You learn how to punch first, you learn the mechanics. Dominic throws a punch at me, you see right away, the line is to the center, his punches, and obviously the knuckles are horizontal, his elbow's not flaring out, the elbow is low, the three knuckles are exposed. Now, the first move you learn how to block against in Wing Chun is a center line punch, right? So again, this movement doesn't necessarily have to be just a punch, it could be a knife thrust, right? It could be a stab of some kind. So what you apply to a free-handed movement can apply to an edge weapon movement as well. Nothing should change that drastically. If you change drastically, that means you have to learn a completely different system, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with learning to understand how to hold a knife and understand how a knife moves, but remember, we don't walk around with knives and try to hurt people, right? We have open hands. You can't walk into a metal detector with a knife and not expect anyone to get surprised. So, worst case scenario is what we always train for. Worst possible case scenario is what we train for. There's going to be times where angles are different, and there's a time and place to train for that as well. Not everything will happen in a 50-50 for one-to-one type position, right? I could be turned sideways and something can happen. I could be turned this way, something can happen. So the goal is repetition, slow movement. Speed is a byproduct of technique. Don't go for speed first. If you go for speed first, chances are you may miss something. There's going to be a gap in that movement. If there's a gap in the movement, you may get hurt, you may get sliced. So the goal is you find a pattern, you repeat the pattern over and over and over again until your muscle memory takes over. Muscle memory takes over, your brain doesn't have to think about it too much anymore. And if the muscle memory kicks in, you move faster than you think your body's even moving. So Dominic's first punch, I don't have to think about this too much. I know my body has to move. So again, the basic guidelines, my surface area changes. When my surface area changes, I avoid contact. Contact turns from a direct impact to a grazed point, or sometimes no contact at all, but I can move it out of the way. We have the gift of both of our hands, right? So another reason why Wing Chun from A to Z is very important to training. Sensitivity training is key because you have to understand that when you make contact with your opponent's arm, you're not just making contact with his arm. This bridge allows you to feel everything his body does. His joint movement, the contraction of his muscles, you feel it all through just one single point of contact. Don't think of your contact just being me touching his wrist, right? It's beyond that. You have to look beyond that. And that's what sensitivity training is very important for. So the first stage of Wing Chun, Dan Chi Sao, understand how to roll with your opponent, stick his arms, right? When you stick your arm with your opponent, you can now maneuver him wherever he wants to go. You won't be able to understand that if you just blindly aim and make contact with his arm, right? So Wing Chun training, basic concepts, applied to knife, no knife, it's all the same thing. Train from A to Z.